thought this was a really nice contribution, and that we rarely see in ABBA. It's definitely something that it would be great to see more in years to come. So just to provide some reactions to the two studies that we saw this morning, I'll start with the Casey study. I really like the methodological development that went into it. I mean, it's a methodology that could definitely be generalized to other studies to sort of determine both preference or reinforcing effects of a specific dimension of the verbal stimulus, and in this case the dimension is language. And it was also very interesting that you were open to analytical additions. So it evaluated difference by location bias and the teacher gender. So I thought that was really a smart addition that you probably didn't plan originally, but you were open to add them as the study went on. As I was listening to the study, a number of potential extensions came to mind. The issue of preference towards a language really brings up broader discussions about the nature of the ability of a bilingual speaker to switch from one language to the other. And it's of course it's a well-known fact that second generation immigrants typically lose their language, and third generations almost on every occasion lose their language. So definitely there's a history there in which the heritage language, if you wish, become preferred over time, and it might be because of differential reinforcement, extension, banishment, and so it would be really interesting to evaluate how this process occurs over time and how, for example, banishment may affect preference. It really struck me to see that the differences in preference were not that higher magnitude as I would have expected. I mean, you would think that if Spanish is spoken at home, that language, at least upon first exposed to the school environment, would be a more preferred language, and then potentially gradually lose preference as you're exposed to extension and maybe banishment contingencies and differential reinforcement. So there's definitely a lot of room to evaluate how these processes may unfold over time. I was also wondering how, to what extent that effect might have been context specific, because you run the study in a school setting, where it's a setting where, I don't know if these kids were part of a bilingual program. They were not. I believe those are not very prevalent in the United States. And the fact that you were working in a setting where engaging in the heritage language, if you wish, is probably have been exposed to banishment, to extension. I wonder how that might have affected the difference in preference and how change in the context may have produced different results. Also, you use a neat procedure to come up with your verbal stimuli. You interview caregivers, and then you translated and back translated the verbal stimuli, which I think is a good way to come up with maybe topographically similar verbal utterances across the two languages. But on the other hand, it may somehow limit the differential reinforcing effects or the range of reinforcing effects of the verbal stimuli. Another approach would have been to simply identify what utterances in either language were the higher, the most reinforcing or the most frequently used, which might be an indication of reinforcing effects, and then run the assessment in that way. I'm not saying that that's a better approach, but might have been a different approach and potentially have produced more differential results. You found that to some extent there was to a degree a correlation between the standardized assessment and then preference and reinforcing effects. Although that correlation was not perfect, and interestingly, Claudia's study found that too, with the exception of the case of Javier, who really had a difference in the prelapse across the two languages, and that carried through the level of engagement in either language. It seems that the correlation is not perfect, which really suggests that we really need to implement these procedures as opposed to the standardized psychometric assessment as an indication of preference or reinforcing effects. So I see a lot of potential of these methods that you guys have developed for actual use in applied setting and not content ourselves with standardized assessments. I have some comments now on Claudia's study. It's really remarkable how listener specific the results that you got were. It seemed that for some of the clients, simply the pre-exposure just completely switched language choice to either English or Spanish, and so it seems that the language, the language of the listener definitely determined the choice of language. However, there were certain dimensions that might have been not related to the listener but to the language. And I thought that was interesting, particularly in the case of Javier, where you've got quite a difference in initiations and duration across Spanish or English. I was wondering to what extent that might have been a function of the partner. I wasn't sure if you used more than one language partner in the study or simply one.
Yeah, we used three English.
You used three.
And three
great.
Spanish ones.
That's great. So that you can really tell that it was a function of the language and not a function of the partner that you have. So that's really good. So I also really like the choice of outcomes or dependent variables that you use. It's hard to measure dependent verbal behavior quantitatively. So I guess there was a lot of thought that went into choosing these dimensions, duration, initiations, and mean duration per iterance. And it seems that you got a little different results across the different dimensions. So, maybe from this study we can learn some lessons about which of these outcomes or dependent variables might be ideal. It seems that initiations were maybe less biased than things like mean duration by iterance, which may vary quite a bit across languages. You said that Spanish typically takes more time, iterances are longer. I've done a lot of translation work, and when I translate a manuscript from Spanish to English, the English version is typically 30% shorter by number of words. So you also found to some extent a relationship between proficiency in a standardized test and level of engagement in the language, but again that correlation was very imperfect, which again calls for the need of direct observation based measurements. I have a few more comments that are probably more general in nature, and have to do with trying to expand this line of work, which I really hope that you guys continue to produce good quality work in this area. There are some findings in the literature, not necessarily in the behavioral literature, that suggest that there are a lot of experimental analysis that we could do that we learn a lot more about the bilingual related factors in language acquisition. For example, there is evidence to suggest that when a client is exposed to bilingual environment at school, for example, in a bilingual program, that not only improves acquisition of the L2 language, in Spanish in this case, but it also improves acquisition of English, and it also improves general performance at school. So there seems to be something about acquiring two languages that is really advantageous in general for the development of complex behavioral repertoires. And that's a finding that it's been reported repeatedly in the group-based studies, but there's a lot more that we could know at a more molecular level if we were to run a specific analysis that try to see how using a particular repertoire in a particular language induce certain abilities to generalize, for example, those responses to the other language, provide a more molecular basis. What are the behavioral mechanisms underneath these more general findings that we find, that are reported in the mainstream psychological literature. Similarly, it's a classical finding in psychometrical literature that bilingual individuals are more intelligent. They have a greater, they do better in the intelligence tests. So again, there's something about acquiring multiple languages that is advantageous. And knowing more behaviorally what is involved is really, really interesting. There's really nothing out there. It's interesting to notice. I was reading some articles to prepare for this session that even though bilingual people tend to do better in intelligence tests, the perception of other people is actually the opposite. People think that you're stupid because you have an accent. I of course have an accent. I apologize. Also, there are a lot of procedure evaluations that could be conducted in this area to determine what methods might be the most effective and efficient in using a second language, which is a related area to your topic of study here. And there's really very little have been done. There was a study published in JAVA in 2014 by Unavi, and in that study they showed that TAC training and native to foreign intraverbal training were particularly effective in producing L2 or second language responses. And I thought it was interesting that native to foreign intraverbal training as opposed to foreign to native intraverbal training was more effective. It seems that the native words or verbal stimuli are more, somehow are more effective antecedents to acquire responses in the other language. And at the end of the day, translation is a complex conditional discrimination repertoire. So we do have the methodology to induce conditional discrimination, but we just haven't used them. Those methods that we know for inducing this particular repertoire. Another area that I think would be really interesting to expand this line of research is trying to evaluate the effect of stimulus equivalence procedures in the maintenance and the development of second language repertoire. Again, very little done in the literature. One of the activities that I do in one of my classes is to present the students with a matching to sample task where they have to match Vietnamese words for engine parts. You of course know nothing about those words. And we do an equivalence test before and after, and after a very brief training, 100% of the students have emergence, show emergence of these new words and relationship with these words with the sound and with the picture. So stimulus equivalence training or training methods to induce equivalence may be really advantageous to promote acquisition of language and maintenance of language. I mean another area that probably more relevant here in the United States. So what do you do to maintain a second language? They die out. It's definitely they have a huge cultural value. So it would be interesting to know more. What do you do? How do you engineer the environment to preserve those languages for longer? In a setting where there's a main or there's a dominant language, in this case English. So I'll just close with some comments about languages and behavior analysis. I hope this is not too general. I'm part of the ACB, so I have to do some commercial work here. So we have almost 2,000 certified professionals in non-English speaking countries, and that's a number that has increased quite significantly in recent years. So language-related factors for applied behavioral analytic work is becoming increasingly important, and that is bringing up all kinds of challenges that we have not met yet. One of them is to provide literature materials in vernacular languages, and of course all of the reference literature is in English, and people are using borrowed words all the time in different languages to refer to behavioral analytic concepts. So it's very important to develop these reference materials in other languages, and I was involved in a study recently to develop a glossary in Spanish. So if any of you is interested, there's an app called ADA Diction that has these glossaries in iTunes, and it has over 1,300 behavioral terms translated into Spanish, following a very systematic methodology. So I think I'll stop here, and again, congratulations